Hey there, my friend. Welcome back to another interview episode on the More Than Social podcast. If you have an online course or want to start an online course, this one's for you. I am pleased to welcome Caitlin, the CEO of Skill with Success, a company that is really dedicated to teaching coaches and course creators how to turn their online course into a seven-figure business without actually launching every single month. So she has rapidly grown to over 11 million in revenue over the last few years, and she's definitely not slowing down. Caitlin believes that there's more than one right way to build a business. And if launching isn't your cup of tea, you don't actually have to do it. So she's learned the lessons the hard way. She's been in it. She's been in that trap of launching over and over and over again and bringing in inconsistent revenue. And that's what really stressed her out. So this is why she's doing what she's doing. She actually pivoted her business to selling her course on Autopilot, where she has now seen the benefits and the consistent revenue coming in within her business. Now, she actually teaches these methods on how to turn your course to this really freaking awesome, successful business. So I literally picked her brain. There's so much that you're going to learn from here. So biggest tip for you, if you have an online course, there's different methods that work. There's different strategies, but this one is for those who don't like the stress of launches. Hey, Caitlin, welcome to the More Than Social podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm very excited to dive in, talk all about your success with courses and the journey from launching all the way to no longer having to do launches and just having that consistent revenue. But before we dive in, for our listeners, before we actually press record, we were just about to talk about having a baby at the same time of running your business. So I would love to take it back 12 years ago
Yeah.
for when you were running a business, had a child, and kind of how has your journey gone from that moment all the way to where you are now?
Yeah. So I started my business when my daughter was around 2 years old, which for any parent out there, you already know that two is a very trying time for parents. I definitely can remember times where I was literally on the phone with a consulting call and at the same time trying to body train her and just doing all the things at once. But I actually started out doing social media management. So I was freelancing as a social media manager. And after I'd been doing that for a while, I was kind of tired of being the one who was actually doing all the scheduling for other people, all the tweeting, all the content creation. And I wanted to shift into more consulting. So I started taking on some consulting clients. And over time, I realized, like so many of your listeners have probably realized, that even though you're seeing different clients, they're coming to you with the same questions over and over again. And so by doing that, I kind of developed my own framework, right? And I'm sure that's just kind of what happens when you are running a one on one service business, coaching, consulting, anything like that. And so I was like, you know what? At the time, I'd never sold a course before, but I was like, I'm going to try to package this into a course and sell it, and let's just see what happens. So I was still taking one-on-one clients at the time, but yeah, and then the rest is history.
It's funny when you were talking about managing 2-year-old plus doing
Oh
calls.
gosh.
I was on a call the other day. Me and my husband were both on the call, and she was just playing in the background. And then she realized that she could see us on Zoom, and she's like, Mama, Dada. And like the whole call was just like, yes, you can see our faces there and here. Like it was like wild to her, but it's so funny.
Yeah.
Now, so with your course, okay, so you went from social media management, doing service based,
Mhm.
then went to consulting, then turned that into a course. For how long did you have a course, or do you still do consulting plus have your courses, or have you shifted directly now into only doing courses?
So now I only do courses, and I made that shift within the first year of putting out my first course. So when I put out my first course, I think the year was 2015, right? And so I packaged everything that I knew about social media marketing, put it into a course. I made every mistake in the book. I had no idea what I was doing. My course covered like every social media platform out there. It was so like big and bulky because I wanted to be helpful, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the things that people who are consultants and service-based owners really struggle with is because you know so much, it can be kind of tricky to figure out, well, what exactly should I put into this course? And my thought was, I'm going to put everything and the kitchen sink inside of this course. And so I did, but lucky for me, people actually loved it. Now, they loved it because there were certain sections that really resonated with them. So, by doing that kind of big overarching course, it allowed me to then see, oh, you know what? The only section that people really care about in this course is Instagram. That was like the most popular
Mhm.
section. So I thought, what if I just doubled down on this and made a course that was only about Instagram, right? And so later on that year, I launched an Instagram course. I was still very much in the launch model. I had no clue what Evergreen was. I didn't understand that you could sell something on autopilot. I was just, of course, listening to the same podcasts and YouTube channels that everyone else listens to that were talking about launching all the time. So I was like, well, okay, I guess that's just the way to do it. And so I sold that Instagram course for a while and it did really well. And over time, I started building out a free Facebook group to sell that Instagram course. And so then, as my free Facebook group really took off and got bigger and bigger, I started getting a lot of questions about, well, how do you grow a Facebook group? And so that led me to my next course, which was all about Facebook groups. And then after I was selling that Facebook group for a while, I initially started selling it with the launch model. My revenue was definitely just kind of coming up against a wall. Like I couldn't push past the number that I kept coming up against. And so I was like, I need to switch things up here. No clue what to do. Met someone, he introduced me to kind of like that this was even an option because he had been doing it with his own course. And once that happened, it just really opened my eyes to a different way of doing business. And I like to be really clear with people like, if launching works for you and if you love launching, then that is awesome. Definitely go for it. But there is no one right way to grow a business. And if launching doesn't resonate with you, if you don't like it, I just know that there are other ways to do it. But long story short, sold the Facebook group on autopilot and then people started asking me, "How are you selling this on autopilot?" And so it was in 2017 that I started teaching 2017? No, 2018 that I started teaching people how to sell their course on autopilot.
Amazing. And obviously there's so many ups and downs that you just talked
Oh,
about.
yes.
One thing that I loved what you said is like you're listening to what people are doing and asking for.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really big important piece to pull out. It's sometimes we get so caught up in like you said, you want to give and just blurt out every single thing that you know, like what you saw within your course. If people aren't resonating with certain aspects, listen to the data. That's why I like digital marketing in general.
Yes.
It literally tells you what's working and what's not working. But I actually had a similar but different experience. So when I first wanted to start my own course, I didn't create all the videos first. I actually pre-sold it and
Mhm.
then did it live. I remember, so I did the launch,
Yeah.
and I remember my first webinar, I put it together within less than 24 hours. I was like, I'm just going to do it this Saturday. Like, I was living at my parents' house. I was in my bedroom and I turned my dresser. This is really funny. I turned my dresser around to make it look like a desk because I didn't have a desk and I
Right.
put it beside a window so I had better lighting.
Mhm.
No one could tell that I was sitting behind an actual dresser. And I sold my first two right then and there. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm doing this. But because I did it, I gave everything. Like I was like, you gotta do this and this and this and this and
Yeah.
this and this. And there was so much in that course. I was even overwhelmed after looking at it. And then I spent so much time just like removing all the pieces that they didn't necessarily need to get from A to Z.
Right.
And that to me in the beginning, I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm not giving them anything. Like it was such a battle for me. But yeah, it's a wild journey. But I like how you listened to what people were asking for and kind of went that route. Now, curious,
Yeah.
do you still have multiple courses or have you narrowed in on just having one signature course that you sell all the time on autopilot that just that's kind of your baby? Or like, what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah. So right now, there's one signature course that I'm selling on autopilot, and we're just selling that signature program over and over again. And one of the things that people ask me about, especially as they're making the transition from services to selling courses, is do I need a full product suite? Do I need like a small offer and then a signature course and then a mastermind and then a this and a that or whatever? And my advice to 99% of people, right, is that it's really important to focus on that signature offer first, because
Mhm.
at every stage of business, there's different things that you will then be able to implement, right? If you are a course creator, or a service provider or whatever, if your course is making less than $1 million per year, the number one thing you need to focus on is how to generate consistent revenue from that course. And that's not going to be possible if you also have a small offer and a mastermind and a this and a that or whatever. And I think that what happens for a lot of people is that they look at others who have bigger course product suites and they're like, well, do I need to do that to be successful? And even now, I have a smaller offer and I also have a 90-day mastermind. We have also a continuity offer that attaches on to our signature course if people want to stay longer. But the only program that I'm promoting to the public is that signature offer. And if I had tried starting with all of those different things from the beginning, it would have broken my business, because it's hard enough managing the marketing, sales, delivery of one course. And unless you have a big team and people to help you out and things like that, it's just not feasible. And so, if you're listening now, if you're selling a course and that course is less than a million, then focus on selling that course consistently. You don't need like a full product suite in order to do that. You can definitely make $1 million from selling one course.
I love that. And when you're talking about a signature product or signature course, for the people that don't know that language, can you
Mhm.
break down like the what a signature course actually entails
Yeah.
or
So
looks like for someone?
I guess it's kind of the main thing that you're known for. When people think of your name, it's that one specific problem that you help people solve, right? So for us, it's how to build out a profitable sales engine in 30 days so that you can sell your course consistently. And so it's just that main thing. For example, I'm not on Instagram talking about a continuity offer where if they want extended access to the community, they can pay $97 a month if they want to stay longer, because that's nobody's interested in that, right? Because they're not even in the course yet. So I'm just fully focused on educating people about the problems that they are actively experiencing, which are related
Mhm.
to that signature course.
Yeah. And now from a price perspective, like signature courses, there's a range of pricing. Based on your experience and what you're seeing working in the industry now, is there a specific sweet spot for a price point? Like, is it a rather of it's a 12-week program for this cost, or what are people doing nowadays?
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, honestly, it really depends on what your market is and what it is that you're offering for people. So, like, we've helped clients get to $1 million from selling a 297 course. We've helped them do it with a $2,000 course. Like, the range is pretty big. I will say that typically, if you're selling something that is over $3,000, you're going to need to have some kind of a sales call or something, either a sales call or some sort of really lengthy DM process where you're messaging them the webinar and then you're following up with them and all these different things. And so if you really want to sell the course on Autopilot, ideally it's less than $3,000.
And now you see it all the time with a course, you also get the 12 weeks of coaching to go through the course and stuff like that. Is that a strategy that you're still seeing people go through, or is that really specific based on the person and based on the niche as well?
So I think it's specific. Well, a lot of it is specific based on the person. But here's what I would advise. I think, first of all, 12 weeks is a long time to offer coaching with any kind of program. You can definitely offer that if you want. But the most important thing is to make sure that whether you're offering 8 weeks community access or 12 weeks or 6 months or whatever it is that you've decided to include, it needs to be limited access. And that was one of the mistakes that I made with the very first course that I ever sold is I was giving lifetime access to the content and lifetime access to the community because I didn't know any different, right? I was just like, "Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do." And I mean, I no longer sell that course, but the group it just became too big and people because they had lifetime access to all of the community, they weren't really moving as quickly as they could. You know what I mean? They were, well, I have this and that or whatever. I do think
Mhm.
that giving lifetime access is great. We do that with our program. So when people enroll, they have lifetime access to the content, but they have a limited time access to the community itself. And then if they want to extend their time in the community, they can do that.
Okay, so then with the community, are you going live and stuff, and that's kinda like where you're doing the coaching on top of the
Yeah.
program at
So,
that
and I
point?
the way
Okay.
that I frame it is office hours because I think that what happens for a lot of people is they get sucked into kind of running these communities where they feel like now they're on 24/7 and anytime someone asks a question in the community they have to rush in there and answer it and whatever. And it's really important that you are setting up a schedule in your business that you'll be able to follow through with and that will benefit your clients. So for example, I'm a big fan of setting up office hours. Now, because we have a lot of people enrolling every day, we have office hours twice per week. But even if you have office hours once per week, or in some cases, maybe they, depending on what your course is and what's it about, maybe it's like once a month. But basically what you're doing during that time is that's when you're answering everyone's questions, right? And so people can post questions inside of the community whenever, and then during the office hours is when you're going through all the questions or requests for feedback or whatever it is and you're answering all of that.
Amazing. And now, so what happens if so people are obviously coming in at different stages. They're going to have different questions based on where they're at within the course or the program. How do you manage that if someone's just getting started versus someone who's middle of the course? Like you're just spitfiring answers when they're asking them, or is there any structure that you follow there?
Yeah, so there's definitely a structure. I tend to ramble, so I always like to have a slide deck. And so I am live streaming into the community, but I'm sharing my screen. So I have a slide deck where we take them through like the introduction, where we go through kind of various different exercises that kind of build community. And then after that, then each slide has a screenshot of that person's question. And if I need to provide additional teaching, I've already prepared in advance an additional slide that goes underneath it. And people typically ask the same kinds of questions over and over. So typically, I don't have to create new slides every week because at this point, I've already created them all. So I'm like, oh, this person wanted me to go a little bit deeper on this or that. And so then I'll just have that slide ready to go. And so then I can just get through everyone's questions. Usually it takes an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, and people can show up live, but they can also just watch the replay inside of the
Mm,
community itself. And it's a
amazing.
lot easier to manage than having like separate Zoom links or whatever for everyone to join. Like I have that in my higher level mastermind, but not inside of the course. It's too much to manage. And it's nice for people since you're selling Evergreen, since new people are coming in every day, kind of like you mentioned, it's nice for them to be greeted with some video content that's in the group and see that consistent, oh, people are being taken care of. It's okay if I ask questions, all that kind of thing.
So are people pre-asking you the questions, like filling out a form before you do the lives or something like that? Or
Not
how do you
for
get the
so
questions?
I just try to remove as many boundaries as possible. They literally just have to post the question in the community. So all they do
Okay,
is
gotcha.
post the question in the community, and then that morning before I host the live office hours, so I host them every Tuesday and Thursday, and then I just go through, screenshot, put it on the deck, pull up if there's like a slide that goes deeper on whatever topic they're asking about. But sometimes the questions that they're asking are just like kind of quick questions, or sometimes the question is already answered somewhere inside of the course. So I can help point them to where we go deeper
Mhm.
on that inside of the course. The course is very step by step. And I think that's one of the things that people need to understand when making that transition from service or one-on-one or things like that into courses is because when you're doing one-on-one, even if you have some kind of content or whatever that people are accessing, because they have that one-on-one access with you, you can't the I don't how do I say the content can be a little bit weak. That's like kind of a
Mhm.
harsh way of saying it, but the content doesn't have to stand on its own 2 feet because you're there one-on-one helping them through that. And what's going to happen when you start selling courses is that over time, you're going to be able to update your course so that it just gets better and better. But the only way it's going to get better is if you put it out there, even if it's not perfect, get it going. And then once people are asking questions, you're like, hey, I notice everyone's having this question. So I'm going to add this other little lesson in here or whatever it is. But it doesn't have to be perfect from the get go.
Yeah, I think that's something that you just need to echo that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, oh my goodness, my first live one was awful. And I mean, people got great results,
Yeah.
but looking back, I'm like, ee. And
Yeah.
then I actually just redid my entire Spotlight Theory program. I think the last time I recorded it would have been 2019 to maybe 2020. No, definitely earlier than that. Somewhere around there. I can't remember at this point. But I just redid it all. And it's like I didn't make many changes in terms of the strategy because
Right.
our systems are all going to be very similar,
Yeah.
but it's updating the video content, making sure that you're explaining it different, like adding in anything else that's kind of like new in the industry. But it's nice when you go back and see the improvements. Now, talking about the launching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So launching are like, okay, every single month or every single 3 months you open the doors and then you get a flood of people
Mhm.
coming in. So now you're talking about automating it instead of doing that, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Do you still focus on like a masterclass or a webinar that's just like on demand? Is that like the main approach that you see
Yeah.
working?
So the way that we teach it is that people have an automated sales presentation. You can call it a free masterclass, you can call it a free webinar, whatever it is, but it's automated. And so you're driving traffic to a page where people are signing up for, they can choose whatever time they want. They're going through, they're attending, they're able to buy as they watch. And that's why the price point is important. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, it's really important for the price to be under 3K so that people are able to, it can be $100, it can be 300, 3,000, but it really should be under 3K max, right? And I think that well, that's another I don't wanna go off on that tangent. This is why it's a slide deck. But what I will say is that, yes, so it's automated, people get through it, and then there's different things that happen inside of the funnel that make sure that people are seeing the right content at the right time, right? So the cool thing about running automations now is that you can use all these different tags and people can, based on the way that they are behaving inside of your funnel, they can decide, oh, I'm going to be shown this next. Oh, I'm not going to be shown this next. Oh, this person needs like a couple weeks nurture sequence and then be reinvited back into the sales cycle. But it's all automated. It's kind of like those choose your own adventure books from like the 80s.
Now, so you're doing it in a way where people can still sign up for Tuesday at 7 p.m. versus it's just the on demand get instant access, or are you offering still watch yesterday's replay plus choose your date and time to join me live?
Yeah, so they get to
Okay.
so the way that we're teaching it is fully automated. So when people are signing up for it, they have like different times that they can choose from. So if they go to sign up for the webinar, no matter what day it is, based on what date is, they just get to go in and check, choose whatever time, and then it's everything's pre-recorded and
It's
automated. So they're
pre-recorded.
just getting that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you make it known? Because I've seen people who do
Oh
this and
yeah.
they'll pretend like, oh no, this is
Yeah.
live. Or do you say, hey, you'll just get access to the pre-recorded version this
No.
time?
So it's really
Okay.
important that if you say something is going to be live, that it's live. And if it's pre-recorded, people are going to know that you're just not saying it's live. Yeah. And I think that people get a little bit confused sometimes because so right now our business is generating close to probably this year a little bit over 4 million a year. And the things that I'm doing in my business now are not the same things that I did to get to my first million. So right
Hmm.
now I have a big team, I have a big ads budget, I have all these things, and so I can layer on live events, in person events, a podcast, a this, a that, the other, all these different things. But if I had attempted to do all of that when my course was under a million, there would be no way that I would have been able to do it. And I think that there are different things that you need to do in order to get to that next level of business. So
Hmm.
I'm no longer trying to make my first million. I'm trying to get to the next stage and the next. And so I think that sometimes it can be tricky when people see me doing things and they're like, "But Caitlin, you also have this smaller offer. You also offer this or that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm in a completely different space." And if I had done
Mhm.
all this, like I had to wait until I was making money consistently, until my business could tolerate more risk before I was able to do that. And so it's really important that people are using like the right strategies at the right time. And that's one of the most dangerous things that happens in the online space is they see people doing different things and they're not seeing the full system that's like powering everything underneath. They're kind of just seeing the tip. And so they're making assumptions based on kind of what they see happening on the surface and then they try to replicate in that in their own business and it just tanks. I mean, I know 'cause I've done that exact same thing when I was first starting.
Well, and, like, a big piece of advice that I got years ago now was instead of focusing like, people will work from the bottom up, so the lowest price point, "Let's get this $7 product cranking," and then they're like, "Hey, now let's add," and then let's add the next one, but it's like, instead of if you can focus on your signature course that's gonna bring in higher profit at that point or larger
Mhm.
income, then you can start to work your way down versus going the opposite direction. That's something that worked really well for me. Now, when it comes to the sales presentation, webinar, masterclass, whatever the heck we want to call it, do you have any tips or strategies that you know works really well for them to kind of follow in their own?
Yeah, I would say one of the big things is that a lot of times people think that they can just repurpose their live webinar and put it into an automated funnel along with all of the other like content that they did during that last live launch, a last live webinar, just repurpose it into an automated funnel, set it up, turn it on, and then everything starts rolling in. And the reality is that the buyer's experience is completely different for someone who's watching a live webinar than someone who has just heard about you yesterday, landed on a piece of content, signed up for your masterclass, and then they're there and they're going to buy that same day. It's a completely different environment. And the content that you are putting inside of your webinar, inside of your like emails, all of that is going to be different in from what you're doing live. So one example is like when you're doing a live webinar, right? You really want to build curiosity because you and it's almost like you want people to be a little bit confused when you're doing
Mhm,
that live webinar in order for you to then prompt questions, right? And you're there live, so you're answering questions. So that's part of the selling strategy when you're doing a live webinar. When you're doing an automated webinar, it's totally different. So even if you're doing both, if you're doing live and automated at the same time, the content's going to be different, right? Because in that
mhm,
automated webinar, be very crystal clear. There cannot be any confusion because you're not there to answer questions, right? And
mhm,
so it's really important that people kind of understand and put themselves in the shoes of someone who is going through your funnel. It's not the same as when you're in a live launch and you've been getting like 2 or 3 months of extended like nurture content and then you're put in this buy now in this short time period and then it's all over. It's
mhm,
the the thing that I love about selling with an evergreen model is that you're constantly looking at feedback and looking at data and you're able to make changes in real time. You don't have to wait months for your next big launch in order to test the next like messaging strategy or like whatever it is that you want to try out. But I would say that's like the most tangible thing that I can tell people in terms of the differences is that automated webinar, your offer has to, you really have to have it dialed in and it has to be crystal clear to people. And you have to be able to convey the value of your offer that they are interested in. And
mhm,
that piece is so important because I think what a lot of people kind of do when they're selling courses is they would prefer the course seller would prefer to talk about what they find most valuable about the course. But the thing that you find most valuable more often than not is not what the audience is most interested in because they're not aware of all those deep down and dirty root causes to solve the problem. They're just aware of the symptoms that they're having. So
Mhm.
it's really important that when you're selling courses, especially if it's automated, that you are like, you're there to serve, you're there to meet the needs of your audience. You're not there to talk about what you find most exciting or interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's with anything in business marketing, it's not about you at the end of the day. It's about that dream client that
Yeah.
you're either working with or want to work with. I think that is sometimes so hard for people to wrap their minds around because it's you think best as that expert,
Mhm.
but just listen. And this goes back to what we talked about in the beginning that you did really well with your courses is you listened.
Yeah.
You literally acknowledge what people were saying, and that is going to help anyone, regardless if it's webinars, courses, service does not matter. Just that's what's going to help you really soar that business. Now, I do have one more question. I know you've already given us a lot to think about. From a pricing perspective, if it's going to be automated, do you recommend people have payment plans as an option for people to do? So a payment plan plus a full pay, or like what's kind of the strategy around that?
I do think it's nice to be able to offer some kind of a payment plan because it does increase your overall conversions when you're able to offer a payment plan, right? And so
Mhm.
that piece is important, but the thing that you need to keep in mind is, you know, again, looking at what other people are doing and then understanding what your business is capable of doing, right? Because you may not be in a spot where you can offer a 12-month payment plan for your $1,000 course, right? And that's
Mhm.
okay because what you need to understand is if you're offering a 12-month payment plan, there's a lot of admin involved. There's a lot of following up with people who, like, maybe they change credit cards or maybe their card expired or whatever it is, of manually following up with people saying, "Oh, you know what? I think this expired. Like, can you update your information?" Whatever. And that's the time that you're spending, especially if you're a newer business owner doing that, is not time you're able to spend optimizing your marketing or selling or whatever or delivering to your clients, right? And so I do think that it's really important when you're thinking about offering a payment plan that you're not overextending yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I love that, and there's definitely been even personal experience, like, I've had to do some chasing, and one big tip that I've always done is making sure that you've collected all the payments before the program actually ends, so it's like I've had one client say, "No, I wanna do a 12 payment plan, but it's only a 3-month program." I'm like, not gonna be worth it at that
Yeah.
point." That person's probably gonna fall off as soon as they get all the content. Okay, so I do have one more question for you, but before we get into that, would love for you to tell our audience where they can connect with you, where they can learn from you if they want to implement their own course on automation. What do you got for them?
Yeah, so definitely the best place to find all that is my website. Just go to caitlinbacher.com and I have a free masterclass there, which is how to generate launch size revenue without launching. I also have a podcast. It's a real short podcast. The episodes are like 10 minutes long, and that one is weekly, and you can find that on the website as well.
Amazing. And then my last question, and I actually asked this for all the people that come on the podcast. If you could give one piece of advice to a fellow entrepreneur, it does not have to be about courses or launches or anything like that, but what would that one piece of advice be?
My one piece of advice would be not to be so hard on yourself. So, being personally accountable does not mean beating yourself up. You're accountable for everything that happens in your business, but that doesn't mean you can't ask for help when you need it. And it doesn't mean you can't give yourself grace when you make a mistake. Because as frustrating as making a mistake or encountering an unexpected challenge or feeling kind of stuck, as frustrating as that can feel at the time, your ability to work through that is what is going to make you stronger. And it's what is going to be responsible for growing the revenue inside of your business.
Love it. I love that advice. And I'm gonna say easier said than done because it's so hard to be hard on yourself.
Mhm.
But for anyone listening, rewind that, re-listen to it. Like that is some powerful advice. So thank you so much, Caitlin. You gave a lot of knowledge here, guys. If you have any questions when it comes to how do you actually automate a course, you want to get out of the launch phase, or you're even interested in starting your own course and you don't even know where to start, connect with Caitlin, see how she can help you. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you being here, Caitlin. And thank you for all of our listeners. Let us know that you're listening, and we'll talk to you next week.